I'm Alan Watt, and you're listening to Cutting Through the Hoax Busters.
Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Hoax Busters call. Join the discussion by dialing 724-447-444. Call ID 90337.
Hey, what's going on there, everybody? It's Monday, May 16th, 2016. Shoot, I gotta cut this off. There we go. Ugh. Yeah, that was... Got some static in the line somewhere. Anyway, what's going on? We got, Aussie Luke, doubled 963, Flat Earth Revolution, Hoop Stretcher, Piston in the Tent, Tatter Flag, Tim Born Man, Tim R, and Tiny Man in the chat. Alright, good. Let's see what's going on here. Well, first of all, want to thank everybody who donated into the Hoaxbusters call. Rodney, Jim, Tresser, Matt, and Tim. And yeah, I appreciate those donations. Yeah, it helps me out. And yeah, I have a button on the hoaxbusterscalls.com on the side for that. So we're looking at my notes here, and oh yeah, I totally forgot about a quote, but yeah, anyway, or do I have one here? Yeah, I have a quote written down, but I can't remember if that was the one I gave last time or the one I gave this time. Well, anyway, it says propaganda is the executive arm of the invisible government, but I didn't put down who said that. But yeah, that's, whatever. That's true. Propaganda is executive arm of the invisible government. Yeah. That's what we talk about, and that's what shapes and molds the mass mind and is the true governing dynamic in so-called civilization is all this propaganda. People's idea of what society, how it's made up, and what is important and what's not important, what's dangerous and what's not dangerous, and what's to be a cause for concern and what's not. And that all stems and emanates out of massive propaganda on a regular, ongoing basis. And yeah, we talk about that a lot here on these calls. I was going to go into some stuff here. Just stuff I found around here and there, stuff people have sent me. Well, what do I got? It's just, I didn't want to do a Alex Jones stacks and stacks of news, but no, this is like, I generally don't follow that template of, oh, here's something in the news, and here's something in the news, and here's something else in the news, and blah, 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 and on and on. Yeah, because the news is the propaganda machine. I've talked about this before. The underlying premise of the whole concept of the news media is fundamentally flawed as far as I'm concerned. If you step back and think about it, how sort of actually absurd it is. I mean, or by its very nature that, you can only report on any given set number of events on any given day. So if you tune into Fox News or CNN or ABC or NBC or MSNBC or AOL News or Yahoo News or whatever, they are going to be generally kind of on the same page as far as talking about the same limited sets of talking points and same limited sets of media stories, and some will highlight some things and some will highlight, but it's generally the same. There is no real dissenting voices on anything as far as what they want to convey to the masses that what is important and what is not. So, and then it's usually in line and in conjunction with what comes out of the university systems, what comes out of other programming, and they call it programming for a reason, like Discovery Channel and National Geographic Channel, whatever. It's not supposed to be factored in as, what wouldn't be considered, I should say, propaganda, but it definitely is, all of it. And some people might say, well, that's just ridiculous. Like, well, when I say all of it, I mean, that's sort of a broad brush stroke there, but as far as the general thrust of promoting particular worldviews, I should say, I know I talk about this a lot, like, evolution theory, naturalistic materialism, Darwinism, any publication or organization or something that purports to be, quote unquote, science-based is going to be heavily flogging the naturalistic, materialistic worldview on an ongoing, relentless basis. And, you have to, either if you're a critical thinker, you have to look into maybe, if you're curious enough, like, how the hell did I get here? What's the origins of life? Some people don't give a shit. I don't care. I like to do this, that, and the other thing, and I don't care where I come from. I don't care what that is. I just trying to get by in the world, in other words, and trying to make a buck and trying to pay my bills and trying to have a good time on the weekends, blah, or whatever. Or maybe not a good time on that, whatever. Just, I don't care about any of those big questions. Pretty much believe what I'm told about whatever. If they say that we came from, primordial stew, out of the muck, 4.5, billion years ago. And then the universe is supposedly 15 billion years old, and it popped into nothing for no reason, out of nothing for no reason. And, here we are, and life goes on, and it perpetuates forward, and everything just stumbles and bumbles along, in biology, and also in the wider context of society and culture. Everything's just sort of a random, chaotic, happenstance series of events that kind of just bounce off each other like a bunch of billiard balls. Some go in the side pocket, some go in the corner pocket. Sometimes the 8-ball hits, and then, you're dead at, 30 and whatever. There's just no rhyme or reason to none of it. And that's life. And, what do you got that's entertaining? What do you got that's stimulating? What do you got that's a distraction, a diversion? Because I sure as hell don't want to think about any of that stuff. But, talking about propaganda and its pervasiveness. So you got the context of, you're going to get this in school, naturalistic materialism, the purposelessness and pointlessness of existence and life. And then extending out into your worldview about how events play out, no rhyme or reason to it, just kind of everything is sort of, responds and reactive responses to random occurrences, or if you're talking specifically about the statist apparatus of the United States, well, they bumble and fumble and they're all thumbs and they don't know their ass from, turkey salad, and they just bumble and fumble through things and they piss off the Muslims, and now the Muslims are mad at us, or they come after us because they hate our freedom, and that sets off a chain of events, and it just so coincidentally and happenstancely comes on the heels of the end of the Cold War, because I guess the suggestion is, they were preoccupied with fighting the Ruskies, in Afghanistan, whatever, and they were concentrating on that, and that stabilized power, and that's why we didn't have the terrorist threat back during the Cold War. It's like, they couldn't find time to send a few dudes over to hijack a tanker truck full of fuel and ram it into something, or a plane, because they didn't hate our freedoms back then, but they all of a sudden do now. It's just absurd, all this stuff. But, that's how everything goes. It's all real. And then it's a cause for concern. You say, it doesn't concern me, Chris. I don't give a shit about any of that. Okay, pull your pants down at the line but don't at the airport. Stand in line 4 hours. Yeah, don't fucking question any of it, though, because you don't care about anything or anything that goes on. Just, put up with it. If they tell you to bend over and let them, stick a camera up your poop chute, whatever they want to do. Don't question it. Don't give any kickback on anything. Just go through life like a freaking drone. And, just don't be concerned with nothing. That's what most people do anyway. If I'm told to do something, I do it. Where the audio clip they'd play on No Agenda shows. I'm a rule follower. Somebody says to do it, I do it. I'm a rule follower. It's like, hey, good for you. Good for you. Yeah, you don't question a damn thing, do you? No. Well, that's how everything's so effed up. And it is progressively getting more and more onerous with all this stuff. And it's just incrementally, progressively. And it's all based on just manufactured, fake, bullcrap events, so-called. But I just had a listener send me a article, Kelly out there in Scotland, and it says, police, fake bomb at Man U Stadium left in earlier security exercise. So, basically, the gist of that, Manchester, England AP, I'll read some of it. Police say the device was found at Manchester's United Stadium before the match began at Bournemouth, and the Premier League was a training device okay, I fucked that up, but anyway, to start again. Police say the device was found at Manchester's United Stadium before the match against Bournemouth in the Premier League was a training device that was left inside Old Trafford following an earlier security exercise. Greater Manchester Police said the device was found in the toilets in the northwest corner of one of the stands by United staff. Explosive experts were called in to assess the item, which appeared to be an incredibly realistic-looking explosive device. The stadium was evacuated, the match was postponed, and the bomb disposal experts dismantled the device. John O'Hare, Assistant Chief Constable of the Greater Manchester Police, said, "We have since found out that the item was a training device, which had accidentally been left by a private company following a training exercise involving explosive search dogs. The security alert reflects increased security at Premier blah, 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 blah." Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah, how stupid is this story? How utterly preposterous is this story? so they had a training exercise, I guess, where they're strapping bombs to everything, and they have to be hyper realistic looking bombs for training purposes. Really, you got to make them real for yeah, okay, whatever. So, I would play some of this clip, but I'm not going to because it looks like it reloaded something else. So I'll probably end up playing an ad if I click play again. But the guys on there basically, oh look, it's loading. It's just going to play, isn't it, by itself? Well, I hope it won't. But anyway, so on this story, they have some spokesman coming out, and he's taking responsibility for, oh yeah, I accidentally left the bomb in the bathroom. I thought it was the one I already got. It wasn't one I already got. Yeah, and then they describe it as having a label on it and a phone number. So this is for training purposes. If you find this, call this number. And it's like some realistic bomb strapped to a gas pipe, I guess they said, with a cell phone and wires and blah, blah, blah. So the quote-unquote authorities see this thing, and they don't notice the label, and they never think that maybe, oh yeah, we were just having a training exercise. Maybe it was, they never think that. It was one of the ones they left in there from the previous training. They never thought, that never occurred to them. And then if that didn't occur to them, the label on the frickin' thing that says, if this is a training device, please call this number if you find it. If that didn't clue them in to that it was a training device, give me a break. Oh my gosh. How, and people read this shit, and they don't critically analyze it. They don't say, what the hell? That just glazes over the fact that, yeah, it had a label on it. Had the phone number on the call, like, okay, yeah, that identifies it as yours then, didn't it? So what was the confusion? So they evacuated the stadium, and they shut everything, locked everything down, got everybody up in a panic, and, we left a training bomb in the bathroom. Sorry about that, folks. It's like, no, you're absolutely full of shit. If you did leave a training bomb, yeah, you would know that it was right off the bat. It wouldn't be any question. Oh, there's a bomb. Somebody sees a bomb, and then they go, oh, send in the bomb squad, and then, yeah, well, go ahead and check if there's the label on it we stick on the training bombs. No, they didn't. No, they didn't do that. Oh shit, no, lock everything down. Let's lock everything down first and panic everybody. And, yeah. Oh, that's so believable. Such a believable story. No, I don't believe that. I think that's a total crock of crap. Obviously. But it just shows that this stuff is manufactured. Hey, if there's real terrorism going on and real shit going on, and they gotta be, alert, and, you think they're gonna be doing all these drills and causing all this cross confusion, doing all this other stuff at the same time that it could be real? And because none of it's real. Why would they be doing all this? Well, they gotta train and prepare. It's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, they gotta do it in public, they don't have training facilities or anything. They gotta do it out in public and in real, yeah, I guess to make it more realistic. And I talked about that, article that ran across, I think I got a fakeologist well, I'm sorry to whoever sent that to me. Oh, Jay sent it. Yeah, Jay sent it to me. Cannes Film Festival, and then they had a realistic training exercise drill in the run up to it, and that's yeah, they got to do it at some busy high peak tourist event, and we're gonna run a drill. Yeah, okay, jackass, wouldn't you do your drill like in a more convenient time? Well, no, because the whole point is to keep everybody like freaking shell shocked. You want to do the drills in front and like high profile, and everybody sees it, and everybody's like, "Yeah, gotta be alert, terror everywhere." And then they're running around in the yellow vest, and shooting blanks and doing somersaults behind car, and then it's like, it's very dramatic and theatrical too, right? But that's real. But we're going to a film festival today and see fake stuff, and then we got real stuff going on over here, and everything's kind of, all the lines are blurred. You got television series and stuff to deal with it, and people look at that, and they look at movies, and they fills in the blanks, and the reality and the fiction get blurred, and it's like, no, it's all fiction. It's all fiction. There's no blurring there. It's just some of the fiction they tell you is real, and for the purposes of giving you certain ideas, and it helps keep everybody in line, because we need the authorities to protect us from the bad, evil people that are trying to kill us all because they hate our freedom. So you got to accept being under lockdown, because the people out there hate our freedoms and can kill us. We got freedoms, and they don't like freedoms, and they want to kill freedom. So we got to get on lockdown and put our hands down your pants at the airport. And it's like, that just makes so much sense, doesn't it? But people buy it and they don't question it, and that's what's so obvious, absolutely frustrating to me. It's like, man, okay, so everybody's lobotomized, I guess chemically or otherwise, I don't know. Some sort of cognitive dysfunction, cognitive dissonance, disconnect, cognitive dissonance. You can see something so absurd and then still take it in as reality. But speaking of that, I ran across this at fakeologist.com. .com. And I'll post these on these I'm talking about on the blog. Hoaxbusterscall.com. And I was putting stuff in the chat. Well, maybe I'll do that too. But now I'm looking for that article. Oh, did I close that tab? Chris, you dummy. Why did I do that? Oh, no, here it is. I didn't do that. I'm not such a dummy. Here it is. Oh, this is ridiculous too. Businessmen raising 1 million euros to recreate 9/11 to prove conspiracy theorists true or false, quote unquote, once and for all. Hey, dude, save your money, man. Really? Okay. American-born Paul Salo has said he wants to purchase a Boeing 747 jet and smash it into the side of a building at 500 miles per hour and is charging for front row seats. An American-born businessman wants to raise €1 million. I guess that's, €1 million to stage. I guess €1 million is like 150 million US. I don't know the exchange rate. It's like, I don't know. It's a lot. No, I'm exaggerating, but a euro's worth more than dollar. The American-born businessman wants to raise €1 million to stage a bizarre recreation of the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center in New York. Paul Salo, who now lives in Thailand, said he wants to purchase a Boeing 747 and smash it inside of a building in the countryside at 500 miles per hour. He describes it as an important project, quote unquote, to prove conspiracy theories about the terror atrocities, quote unquote, once and for all. Mr. Salo is hoping to crowdfund the event and is selling front row seats to the outlandish spectacle in Thailand for $5,000 each. In a video promoting the quote unquote reconstruction, he said, if you doubt anything about 9/11, we want to blast this to smithereens, or we want to prove you completely right. We're going to purchase a 747 or equivalent aircraft that is about to go out of service. We're going to fill it full of jet fuel. We're going to purchase a building that's about to be torn down in the countryside, and we're going to crash it at 500 miles per hour into that building. If there's just a smoking hole in the building and nothing happens, you pretty much know it was a hoax, right? Because it's obvious, right? Sure, some people might be upset, but we deserve to find out what happened. Yeah, and he grew up in California and blah, blah, blah. Discovered the similar physics, caused Twin Towers collapse, blah, blah, da, da, da. Yeah. Would that make any difference whatsoever in the whole so-called discussion about what happened on 9/11? If you crash a jetliner into a steel-framed modern skyscraper, and it doesn't look nothing like what supposedly happened on 9/11. Let's say you have like some crumpling and the plane falls to the ground. It doesn't even penetrate through a clean hole. It doesn't make like a Warner Brothers cartoon shaped hole in the side of the building like the Roadrunner does when he busts through like the canyon wall with and it doesn't happen that way. It doesn't pan out like that. Will people like become a believer that 9/11 was? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because then it'll be, oh, well, it's not exactly the same building, so how could you know what it would do in that case? And the plane you used was 747. The plane on 9/11 was 767. 767 obviously has more penetration ability to penetrate and make a Roadrunner cartoon style hole in the side of the building and come out the other side. 747 obviously doesn't have it because it didn't happen like it did on 9/11. And the building didn't collapse. Well, that's because the WTC complex was shoddy workmanship, and it was just piss poor engineering design. That's why it collapsed. All the buildings, the whole entire 9-building complex was absolutely, completely destroyed. And they'll talk about, building 7 and blah, 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 but it's not the entire 9 buildings. And then generally speaking, that just the 9 buildings that were part of that Silverstein properties just, were completely a loss. Yeah. And then building 7 collapsed without. Try to get that to happen. Wouldn't that be easier? Just buy a building and then pour some kerosene in it and set it on fire and let it burn and see if it collapses. Well, it's not going to, but, yeah. So what they show us on 9/11 is so beyond the pale as far as being preposterous and ridiculous. But you're missing the point, though. You're missing the point. It's not about the discussion of physics. It's not about any of that. It's about authority and people's belief in authority. And that's what I keep trying to hammer on. It has nothing to do with, if they literally said the Roadrunner himself went through the building and told everybody, it's like, how many people would believe it? Not everybody would, but if like there would be a percentage of people that would literally believe that cartoons are literally real. I'm convinced if an authority told them to, yeah. Not everybody, but there'd be a significant percentage of people, that will believe absolutely anything that they're told if it comes from an authoritative, no matter how absurd it is. Well, maybe that's stretching it, but no, I mean, something equally as utterly preposterous, like buildings, modern skyscrapers and steel structures collapsing from, like kerosene fires. How absurd. But yeah, that's supposedly what happened according to the NIST report and all that. National Institute of Science and Technology. Very, very elite, very, very authoritative. And it's like, whatever they say is the truth, obviously, right? Because they're such an authority. NIST? Oh, yeah. On that note, I mean, I talk about the utter preposterous evolution theory a lot. It's absolutely preposterous. And then not only is it preposterous, but it flies in the face of everything that's known about biology and everything. But here's an article, Evolution Science Clarity. evolutionsciencenow.blogspot.com. I post this on the blog. Are humans getting better? What is really going on? By James Urjuna. There's only one degeneration shown in all human studies of, there's only degeneration shown in all human studies of DNA. We are well over 10 million peer-reviewed papers from all over the world, clearly showing that humans are degraded, have never, quote-unquote, evolved, and at the present rate of the rise of genetic defects, our species will be reduced to stupid, short-living animals with no technology, no speech, no intelligence. We are about 60 years from that. And then rapid extinction because we live only by artificial life support, vaccines, antibiotic, drug surgery. I don't know if I'd agree that a lot of that statement right there, but yeah, it goes in line with stuff I've ran across before. We talked about this before. It's like there's an accumulation of genetic defects that have been observed, something that, has been noted and observed in quote unquote science, far outpacing any kind of beneficial mutations, which is supposedly the driver of evolution, because there aren't beneficial mutations. There hasn't been any discovered. What about, was Jason Calvalito said that, guy, the only debate I ever gotten to on evolution the whole time, I've been trying to get people to debate me on it. Nobody wants, but I kind of blindsided them a little bit. Not really, because it kind of was in line with the topic. Because, not to go into all that, but just, the only person that would attempt it, but he's, saying that, yeah, sickle cell anemia, that's a beneficial mutation. It's like, oh, yeah. But yeah, I guess does that count? So they're going to hinge all of evolution theory on that, which, yeah, they do. I mean, that's the most absurd thing ever, but yeah, everybody's supposed to believe it. Because an authority tells you. I mean, that's the point, too. Absolutely absurd. Absolutely goes against everything that, we're being discovered about biology and everything else. But everybody believes that if you're, consider yourself in any way, shape, or form intellectual or academic, in academic circles or anything, like stuff that's totally unrelated, like you listen to a podcast or something like that, it just drives me nuts. We got to frame all this idea in the evolution because, everything's evolution and then science and then makes it sound science-y. And we'll couch our theory in to make it incorporated into evolution theory, and they just sound ridiculous. Yeah, because the reason why we eat meat is because 62.4 billion years ago, the monkeys that came out of the trees down into the savannas, and it's like, what do you even have any freaking clue what you're talking? 62.4 million with an M years ago, million. And you even know what you're talking about, and you sit there and sound like you're authoritatively talking about 6.4 million. Come on. And then, point out that, when was 9/11 10, 12, 13 years ago? Nobody knows what happened, and they have no fucking clue. But we're going to go 6.4 million years ago and wax eloquently about what monkeys were doing and what they're eating meat. And that's what made our brains grow big. I mean, how retarded, fanciful, and off into fairy tale realms do you have to be before you're an absolute fucking retard? It's you're way beyond that as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, and then people, smart people, I think they're, actually smart in other arenas, but they'll get on there and talk about stuff like that. It's like, you sound like an absolute goof. You have no absolute clue what you're talking about, for one thing. And then it's like 6.5 million years ago. What the hell is that even supposed to mean? You don't even have any concept of how long ago that. No clue, no concept. And it's just fairy tale bullcrap. Long, long ago in a land far away, there was a prince and a frog and a blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, fairy tale, linguistics. 6.5 or 4, and then you get into billions of years. It's like, come on. Billions of years. Well, yeah. But belief in authority, belief in authority, belief in authority, belief in authority. That's what it comes down to. And that's what I harp on. And it's like, yeah, if an authority tells you something, and a lot of people out there are just, they don't think for themselves. They got a brain, but they've never dusted it off and tried to use it. So yeah, so it's the shortcut to the truth is authority tells me, and then I'll believe it. Yeah, I got more stuff that I was going to go into here, but yeah, I'm kind of tired of running my mouth. I'm not even looking at the chat window because I'm looking at articles and whatnot. Who do we got? Oh my, we got a caller in her on the hold. Yeah, let me play this bumper. And we'll bring in West Tennessee. Skoo-doop doop doo 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 doo. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-da-da-da-ba.
Call. Hoax Busters call. Join the discussion by dialing 724-444-7444. Call ID 90337.
Take 4 red capsules. In 10 minutes, take 2 more. Help is on the way.
Oh, yeah, I'm getting some terrible line noise there. Ooh, I wonder what's happening here. Oh, okay, I think I know. Anyway. West Tennessee.
Greetings.
Hey, this sounds like Jay.
It sounds like him, but it's a synthetic synthoid replacement.
So, we're here. We're in the future. We're dialoguing as, yeah, I'm a synthetic replacement too. Actually, it's not the regular Chris that does the calls. It's Chris from the multiverse. If you notice the difference, you hear the sniffle after every third sentence. It's multiverse Chris. Like the regular Chris doesn't sniff after every third sentence. It's kind of
right. I have a synthetic J has a Darwinian toe growing out of my forehead. My forehead sprouted a toe, and that's actually a beneficial evolutionary adaptation that proves evolution, but I'm also the replacement for the old J. Because I'm a better, more advanced J with the toe on my head.
Well, obviously, since the advent of the necessity to, clip your toenails, evolution saw fit to, okay, let's, instead of having to take your shoes off, take your socks off, do all that, okay, I gotta clip my toenails. The evolution is to say, okay, we're gonna forego all that, and evolution says, let's just put them on your forehead so you can just grab your clippers and just go at it right there. They're just right there.
Well, when
look up, you can see the toenail, you can clip it.
When I get a haircut now, I also get my toenails clipped at the same time. I'm glad you talked about Darwin and his crew, because one of the things that I found really depressing in my religious trek over my lifetime was how many religious people, different theological views and whatnot, are so afraid of this view. Right? They cower before it. They're so concerned about paying obeisance and bowing before the throne of Darwin that, giving it credence and being scared of because they're scared, right? They're afraid of the ostracization that comes along with not believing this dogma. And I think that's really sad and pathetic. And I've always called that out in people, which has made me, pretty unpopular because there's so many people in religious theological circles who feel the need to compromise and water down and come up with some equally preposterous, I would say, view of theistic evolution, which is just as stupid as evolution. I mean, it's like saying, because evolution was devised as a system and a philosophy to eradicate religion, first of all. So the very notion that you're going to combine your theism with the anti-theism of this position, and yeah, I know that Darwin originally thought that there was some kind of theistic evolution, but that doesn't matter, right? Because by the end of his life, he said, no, this is about getting rid of religion. We don't need God. And that's why the establishment picked up this position and promoted it, particularly through the Royal Society, most of all, preeminently. It's because it's advantageous to the system. It's the perfect view to make people act like animals, right? To tell them they're animals. And if you tell people they're animals and they don't have any higher faculties above that, then you can be the warden over your farm. You can farm the people. You can run your tests on them like they're test rats, right? You can run them like they're test monkeys, right? In the monkey labs. And that's exactly what it's designed to do. And so it's not accidental, I don't think, that they tell you you're an older monkey when a more advanced monkey, and then they do a bunch of monkey tests. So anyway, but I was a bit disgruntled, and I'm going to do a response. My co-blog, Soul of the East, I'm not angry at Mark or anybody, but a certain writer who's a blogger there, a fellow named Martin, who I've never really interacted with. He's a nice guy, it seems like, but he's very much, I guess, a proponent now of evolution. So he's posted a pro-evolutionary piece, which I plan on doing a response to. So I'm glad you mentioned it. I'm not just trying to promote articles or whatever, but I don't think it's very good. And I told him personally, I said, I don't think this is good. I said, would you like to come on and debate? He said no, and I have the same problem with you. I can't get anyone to come on and debate these things. And you at least got Colvito or whatever his name was. But I've offered Jan Irvin to come on today. I've offered Kurt Doolittle. I've offered these different alternative media persons who are proponents of evolution. And then nobody really wants to come on and debate it.
Wait a minute, Jan Irving is a proponent of evolution theory?
No, we had a debate over atheism, agnosticism, materialism, and then that got into a heated exchange. I'm just making the point that it's very hard to get people to debate. So everybody wants to have these views, and they want to, I'm not here to knock on other people. I'm just making the point that it's difficult to arrange, civil exchange, which, I would always want it to be that way. I would like a civil exchange with, question, or with statement and response, a formal debate setting, I think would be ideal. But I can't ever find anybody who wants to, really defend the position and come on and deal with it philosophically, because a lot of people don't understand that Darwinism is a philosophy, and you can't just defend it and promote it as if it's this, quote, obvious scientific view that doesn't bridge into the realm of philosophy and mythology, because it does. And if you know philosophy, you can come along and I think pick that apart pretty quick and show the absurdities. And I think you do it excellently. You are great at just picking apart the bold-faced absurdities in this position. And most of those absurdities, by the way, would apply also to theistic evolution, which doesn't make any sense either. And it almost always boils, I'll shut up here in a minute, I'm rambling, but it almost always boils down to very basic misunderstandings of things. Like people think that evolution is equal to adaptation, and it's not. Everybody has known about adaptation for a long time, prior to Darwin. Breeding does not equal evolution. People knew about breeding prior to Darwin and Haeckel and these different theorists, right? These are known phenomena, and it's only with the rise of Darwin that you get a new interpretation of these phenomena that extends into origin science and says posits theories about how the long ago origins must be perhaps connected to the phenomena that we see of adaptation in different species, right? So how much, but now this is a huge difference from the idea that DNA produces new information. It doesn't. There's no new information. As we've pointed out many times, and as many other people point out in biology, there's only existing information and switches that are turned on or off. There's not new codes.
Yeah,
the bat doesn't produce the whale code all of a sudden.
No, it doesn't. And that is sort of the crux of the issue, right? As far as, we're in 2016, got scanning electron microscopes and then insight into how the genetic code works, allegedly, and all that. And they're still having these, I talked about before, there was this conference recently, it was maybe a couple of years ago, and then they had these preeminent biologists sort of debating the mechanism. It's like, okay, what are you debating here? Isn't that already nailed down, or shouldn't it, by all rights, have been nailed down ages ago? And they're still speculating and pontificating on the mechanism? Doesn't make any sense. It was Lynn Margulis and Richard Dawkins and a bunch of other biologists, and she's saying it goes one way, and then Dawkins is disagreeing and saying, no, I don't. It's like, well, I thought you had all this nailed down.
Well, there should be mountains of evidence. There should be mountains of fossils that show, I know these are kind of old rehashed points, but they still stand, right? I mean, the assumptions it's all based on the assumptions, and that's what is never challenged. And your point about the absurdity of the guy with the 9/11 staging, that he wants to crash a plane into a building and prove to everyone, right? Well, it's kind of the same problem in terms of misunderstanding human nature and anthropology and epistemology, or how people know things and how worldviews work. People don't change their minds or change their worldviews based on evidence and facts. Now they can, it's not impossible, but most people don't. You don't just blankly, as a blank slate, have a whole bunch of things in front of you that you then can interpret properly without a context, as you and I have talked about many times. And most human beings are wedded to the context, the paradigm that they were given. And that's what, like you said, this is where the education system comes in. You were told this is how things are. You were told it was 4.5 billion years ago. You were told it was 14 billion years ago, the Big Bang, all this stuff. You were told these things by a perceived authority figure, ponytail guy standing there in your class in college biology, and that forms your template for reading the world. And then so when facts come, when somebody comes and says, hey, maybe there was a resurrection of some guy 2,000 years ago, well, you've got the template of naturalism, and so you're going to read that piece of fact or claim or whatever according to your template. And so you're just going to say, oh, well, that doesn't prove anything to me. That was, if that even happened, that was some random occurrence. And, some guy went into a coma for 3 days and they thought he was dead, and then he got up. Right? It doesn't prove Jesus, doesn't prove Christianity or that. That was just a freak occurrence. These kinds of things happen, man. So that, and that's what you see consistently, is that kind of approach to things. In the same way, people are not going to look at a building collapsing, or excuse me, not collapsing from a plane being flown into it and say, oh, well, I guess I was wrong about 9/11. No, they're going to reinterpret it according to the existing paradigm that they've chosen, because that's what they want to believe. And that's what so much of science and modern thought is still operating on the erroneous philosophical view that there's such a thing as neutrality, right? The idea that you can be completely neutral without any bias, without any paradigm, and correctly interpret and perceive facts. And in fact, you can't. And by the way, there's all kinds of research that shows you can't do this. This is actually impossible from scientific means. And if anybody wants to really dig into that, there's a book called Action and Perception by Alva Noe. That was the philosophy book of the year. Surprisingly, a few years ago, whoever decides what the philosophy book of the year is. I think it's out of MIT or something. But the book deals with perception, and it deals with how we interpret and perceive and operate with our motor skills in terms of 3D settings, right? So in other words, how does the human mind coordinate with the body to move in a 3D world? And so, like, if somebody loses vision, so they lose one eye, they have 2D, well, the brain has to adapt and reinterpret and reconfigure how it works in a 2D setting. So for people who, for example, have been born blind and later attained sight, there are cases of people that have done this, and some of these people reportedly have been studied. They had to learn like a child, even though they're, might be 30 or 40 years old. At being blind, they were able to walk around and function. When they got sight, it all had to be rebooted, redone. Like, they couldn't function. In other words, they could function blind, moving around in a 3D setting. But then when they got sight and actually had sight, they had to learn almost again, like a baby, how to function in a setting where they had all of their faculties and could move in combination with sight and touch in a 3D setting. I know that's a little bit long-winded, but it makes the point that there's not a one-way street here where you can just look at a thing and it automatically is shown to you in all of its proportions and potentialities, and you don't just immediately intuit the proper meaning of a thing all the time. Right? Now, that's not to say that nobody ever knows anything. Right? I'm not a relativist, but it's just simply to say that you have to understand worldviews and paradigms and how people interpret events and phenomena, and what you're hitting at with the point of the guy trying to prove things to people by crashing something into a building is illustrating exactly the point I'm making. It's not because the people who are going to stay with the 9/11 story of the government in that case, that's because they are not going to challenge the paradigm, which is the real gatekeeper, right, of their system. Right? They're just going to reinterpret those quote evidences to fit their existing paradigm. So what you have to do, in my view, is to challenge the paradigm itself. You have to do the kind of thing that you're doing with your show. You have to say, look, why are you trying to, in my case with the guy who wrote that article at Soul East, I'm saying, look, dude, why are you trying to fit your theism into something that is palatable to a bunch of people who don't even know what they're talking about? So that's the absurdity of it. You're trying to conciliate and acquiesce and water down what you believe to people who, when you actually look at what they say, it's complete absurdity, right? And they want to turn around and say, well, any religious claims are absurdity. No. They're making something more outrageous than religious claims that are completely nonsensical. 65 million years ago, you knew what was going on with monkeys in a tree at a certain time. Give me a break. That's it's like Star Wars a long time ago, as you said, a long time ago in the galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, that's how Star Wars starts out, with the scrolling. At the beginning of the movies, they show you the little prelude there with the text, and it says in a galaxy long, far, far away, a time long ago in a galaxy far, far away. That's any good fairy story sets you up like that, you know?
Yeah, and so paradigms is the problem here, and this is something that what most people don't understand, but the people who actually do social engineering, people who do ethnography or good philosophers, they're, I think, better at this. They understand how people's thought process works and how humans interpret the world. And this is one of the good, valuable aspects of philosophy, in my view. One of the good things I did learn at university was this kind of stuff. And so, if you understand that, you have a better approach to dealing with those kinds of questions and not letting a ridiculous worldview scare you. Why is anyone scared of this paper tiger of neo-Darwinism? And it's because they don't know, partly they want to believe it for, academic reasons, monetary reasons, success reasons, whatever. But on the other hand, I think a lot of people are threatened by what they think might be, something that challenges their religious views or whatever. And even if you set aside the religious views, I would always make this point, like, even if I had no religious views, I still wouldn't believe Darwinism, because it doesn't make any sense. Like, it needs to make more sense than what is out there, right? It should not be this mass jumble of contradictions, which it is. And once you really start getting into the meat of it and looking into what is Dawkins saying, what has he been saying, and I had this, shoved down my throat all of my college time. And everybody who went to high school, you heard this, you probably were hearing it when you were a kid, right? Back to being really young. I mean, we overlook how much this has been churned out in the movies, in the TV shows, as you pointed out, the Discovery Channel and all that kind of stuff. We've been sitting around watching these at Nova, PBS. I remember being 4 or 5 years old, sitting around and you're watching what PBS is on, or NPR is on the radio or something. And what have they been saying? They've been talking about evolution ever since then. Since you were sitting around in your diapers, you were hearing Carl Sagan tell you about, the evolution of the universe and all this crap. And like John pointed out, it's all CGI. It's all their synthetic mythology that they're overlaying into your perspective. Right? They're giving you the paradigm you are supposed to have to understand the world, and it's a huge, massive emperor with no clothes paper tiger.
Absolutely, yeah, what I like to point out too is how heavily dependent this whole philosophy, this naturalistic, materialistic worldview, is dependent upon art. Because, you look at the cover of National Geographic, and then, right, they'll have we had this, we dug up some bones out of this cave, and here's what this thing looked like. And they'll have an artist recreation or an artist interpretation of what this creature looked like. And it's sort of this, half man, half ape looking thing. And, and then they make the eyes, they give the eyes a certain human-like quality, which, okay, if you find a skull, there ain't no eyeballs in there, man. So, and a lot is conveyed in the eyes. So they make the pupils like, modern humans and put it in a sort of a chimp-like facial features and give it sort of maybe a little higher cheekbones, a little different structure. And say, here's Monkey Man that lived, X amount of years ago. And it's all interpretive artworks, and then if you drill, you grill them on it, they'd have to admit that that's what it is. You say, you found eyeballs? Oh, no, we didn't find out. Well, how do you know how do you know the eyes look like that? Well, it's just an artistic rendering. It's an artistic interpretation. But, I think what you're saying here is like, you have to look at the greater context of how this information is being presented to you. And then, if you're a person that is prone, which I believe the majority of people are completely, swayed by arguments from authority, because they are, like you're saying, we're immersed into this context, this contextual framework from the time we're in diapers. So, you get this so you start out school, and they start out school early. Now they got pre-K. They used to just be kindergarten. Now they got pre-K. So you go in a very young age into your institutions of learning, so-called, and then you get bathed in these fairy stories. You get told that that's what here's where you live, here's the universe, here's how it came about, and then you don't get kind of introduced to that till you're more at later in the grades. And I mean, I'm not saying they teach you this in kindergarten per se, but what the kindergarten up until a certain grade is what it's conditioning you for is, first you have to be inculcated, indoctrinated into, and I've talked about this before, this doesn't have to be expressly stated. This is everything that is implied. It's like people out there that are, quote unquote parents, so to be a parent in the modern day, totally different definition of what it used to be. You're a parent, you're sort of this caretaker, this guardian that takes a child. And I said, yeah, a parent is defined in the modern day as the person that picks the kids up and drops them off. But you drop them off at an institution, that is their caretaker and their, instructor for the majority of the waking day, and the relationship is established early that they are the authority. So what they say has greater weight than the parents. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, how does that get communicated? Well, when you drop them off at the school every day and they spend the majority of their waking day there. Actions speak louder than words. That's an old refrain. That's true though. It's like, okay, when do they receive that instruction? When you drop them off in the school. And then, there's always the implication that, there's always the admonition that, you need to do what your teacher says. And then, it's like, well, why? Well, you don't have to expressly state it, because obviously the teacher is the authority. And, if mommy, daddy knew what the hell was going on or were smart, they would teach their children. You wouldn't have to outsource that to another agency. But by the mere action of doing it, you establish that relationship of authority. And really, it's like the teachers and the institutions are the true parents, in the modern day. Parent is a loose term. It's like and then it's obvious to the child who the authority is. So that relationship has to be established before they go on to teach them just absolutely preposterous stuff as fact. And that's how you condition and domesticate a human being and turn them into a domesticated product.
And then when you ask, well, why do the teachers teach evolution and so forth and don't know what they're really talking about? They're just, if we're talking about the kindergarten, grade school, high school, middle school era, they're all teaching this. Well, that's because that's what they were taught. In other words, they went through the exact same process, right? So why do they believe it? Well, they were told it by some person in a classroom. Why did that teacher believe it? Well, they were told it previously by some person in a classroom.
Yeah, and the teachers, it's a good point. They go through the same process.
It's a tradition that's handed down.
Yeah, and then, once that is established, and then you have, appeal to tradition fallacy that can be referred to. All that's, what we always taught, and that's what we always did. And that's what we're always going to continue to do because, that's tradition.
Because, as you point out, these people, most of them, unless they're specialists in some sort of, biology program in college, the people that are teaching you the beginning stages of this in grade school, middle school, high school, did not go and empirically verify and study these claims. They read them in textbooks, in college textbooks. maybe in a college biology lab, they looked at some frogs or something like that, but they received a body of wisdom, quote unquote wisdom, tradition from their elders that 99% of they've not empirically verified.
No, absolutely not. Oh.
By their own view of empirical research, empiricism, etc., it's a unverified belief in the claims of some other authority. Now, I think that's a great argument. I mean, it's absolutely impossible to be a complete empiricist, but of course, none of these people have ever really thought it out that far, and they don't care to think it out that far and be consistent with it, because none of these things are really about being consistent. They're, exactly as you said, will to power, moves of authority. You will accept these views because this is the official religion of the state. That is, Darwinism is the official religion of the state, and you will accept it not based on any evidence or proof. You'll accept it because, by golly, you won't have a job and you'll be in whatever sense. You'll be ostracized, and we will excommunicate you from the group if you don't go along with this mythology, the new heretic.
Right, because that's another fallacious line of if fallacy of appeal to consensus, because you can appeal to consensus when you can point out that, there is no biology professor that is taken seriously that would, refute Darwinism, or, there may be some out there that raise some questions about it, but they're gonna do it from a standpoint of, evolution absolutely did happen, but I disagree with some particulars about how it happened. Like I said, Lynn Margulis, one of the preeminent people out there, this, supposedly this whiz-bang biologist, she takes a position that's contrary to a lot of neo-Darwinistic thinking, and she's taken seriously. But it is always with the unexamined premise that's out there that, evolution absolutely did happen. We're just having to work through sort out the particulars of exactly how it did happen. So it's like, and then you look into some of her theories, and you talk about some wacky, nonsensical stuff based on the most loose criteria imaginable. Surface level analysis of structures of, this bacteria resembles a spermatozoa, and then you can see this relationship of the symbiotic relationship in nature where you have these, cooperative, symbiosis between, these types of bacteria and these types of protozoa or what have you. And this is how, more complex life was formed by these symbiotic relationships becoming more and more integrated into fully functioning biological systems later. No evidence for this, nothing like that. It's just pure speculation and conjecture, and what would be the there's a Latin term for that. I don't know all those, but something to the effect of maybe you could help me out, Jay. Post hoc ergo propter hoc, like if that's not even what I see. Yeah. So it's like, looks this way, therefore it establishes this when it doesn't. And that's how all of this works. It's that you have a position of authority, which is, like say, it's established through your conditioning from childhood. And then once that's established, then it's basically game over. I mean, you can get over just about any preposterous notion over on people by just having a presentation that sounds remotely somewhat possible. And like you're saying, it doesn't have to follow logic or consistency. It just has to lend itself to a certain interpretation, and the interpretation is implied or inferred. It's not direct. There's no There's no. Here's the thing about it too. It's like you try to, and this is what I like about what's his name? The guy who. Oh, you know who he is, Jay. He's like anti-Darwinist. He's not a religious guy. He's shoot, what's his name? It'll pop in my head in a minute. But he basically points out that for instance, the evolution of the whale. And he was debating some Darwinists in this debate forum, and he's asking this Darwinist in this debate, can you give anything that falls in line with some quantifiable data as far as even a proposal, even a theory of how many different individual adaptations that this land-based animal would have to go through in order to become a sea-dwelling mammal? And is there any even attempt to give some specific quantifiable data on what that would look like or how that would play itself out in 3D reality? And no, there isn't. There absolutely isn't. There isn't even a proposal of how many steps it would take, what that would look like, how that would play itself out in the genome, how it would express itself in the gene, anything like that. It's just, like I said, it's just you draw conclusions based on some inference that's suggested through the presentation, and then they'll show you some bones and then an artistic rendering of what the bones look like as a living creature. And I went into that before as how, like for instance, Lucy, like they'll show that as, the missing link. And then the paleontologists that found that turned it over to a museum, and then the guy that, paleontologist that was going to, assemble the bones for display, got to looking at the pelvis and said, "Oh, well, that's not right. That's not how the pelvis was." And they took a Dremel tool to it and made it more like a human pelvis. And it's like, okay, so yeah, it's the reconfiguring, reinterpretation of, okay, facts. Are they actual bones? I don't know. Yeah, probably some kind of bone of some kind of monkey or something. But then it's heavily reliant upon this interpretation that's forced upon it.
Yeah, that's the whole kit and caboodle right there. And it's the exact same thing when a person is going to interpret the evidence of, if I smash a plane into a building, I'll prove to people, something about 9/11. No, it won't. It won't prove anything. It might confirm the absurdity of the official story and the people who already don't believe it. But that's not the way that you're going to convince people, generally speaking.
No, absolutely not. David Berlinski, I don't know. That's the guy. But yeah.
Yeah. Not him, yeah. Now, if we think about the so-called scientific establishment, right, the Council of Science that supposedly drops down all these divine truths and laws that are consistently being changed and revolutionized and turning into the opposite of themselves the next day. There was in this Olympian cast of gods at one time a guy named Thomas Kuhn, who wrote a famous book called The Structures of Scientific Revolution. And now this is a really good book because it won the accolades and awards of the establishment. Whenever he wrote it in the 60s or 70s or whenever, 80s. And he pointed out the point that I'm making, that he said, hey, actually people who make scientific discoveries, the ones that we look back on, that we consider relatively useful, say Newton's basic principles of dynamics and things like that. Well, actually, when he proposed those things, he was opposed by everyone. And it was pretty much shot down as baloney. Now, regardless of what everybody thinks of Newton, that's not Thomas Kuhn's point. Thomas Kuhn's point is that if what Newton was proposing was true, shouldn't it have been immediately perceivable as true to everyone based on the empirical evidence presented? Right. Shouldn't it have been? Right? In other words, if there's this thing called scientific neutrality, and there's no such thing as bias in paradigms, then it should have just been obvious that, oh, yes, here Newton has proved it. He's got his equation, and he, rolls the billiard ball off the table, and it falls at a certain speed. Well, that proves it. There you go. We're all wrong. He's now right. That's not how it works. He was opposed for a long time by a lot of people. Now, I don't care for Newton, but I'm saying just that's an example that Thomas Kuhn gives in his book to illustrate that the so-called scientific revolutions that happen in history do not operate the way that science says they should and do operate. And that's his point. And that's why he won Pulitzer, Nobel, some kind of prize that the establishment gives to people. Well, which is very ironic because it's an award from the establishment that proves a book to be worthy, that proves the establishment to be unworthy. And you see the absurdity of this, right? And that's what I'm getting at, is that here's a book from the establishment saying that the establishment scientific milieu does not operate the way that it says it operates about itself, right?
Yeah, well, like the peer-reviewed studies or the peer-reviewed papers that you've referred to, and you've shot me links to a lot of those really good ones, and I had a couple here, and so I've been collecting those. And basically, peer-reviewed papers that say, "Oh, well, the scientific method doesn't apply to the peer review process itself."
It can't. Yeah,
it can't.
Yeah.
And so that goes back to what you're talking about earlier, with all this deference to this, Darwinistic theory and all of this that goes on, even in religious circles where, you have to, defer to it at least on a certain level, and then, maybe propose theistic evolution or something, but you can't discount it. But it's like, okay, the question never comes up. It's like, okay, the Western so-called scientific establishment, where's the evidence that establishes their claims? So you have this body, this organization that's defined a certain way. And then I point out that it's like, okay, this is an organizational structure in the same way that, like Scientology would be, or the Church of Mormon, or a religious institution, or something like that. This is a body of individuals that are interrelated in a certain context, a certain organizational framework. Okay, where is the evidence that would lead you to the conclusion that this particular body, this particular organization, is only concerned with a pure, unsullied pursuit of truth, facts, and evidence, without concerns for, political concerns or grant money, corruption, or any of those things that would skew and distort what is emanating out of this particular well-defined institution? Okay, nobody asked that question.
Not even to mention the fact, the element which nobody ever talks about, that I bring up, the fact that it's billion-dollar publishing companies that actually publish scientific journals. Okay, so this is part of a private for-profit industry. Okay, the science does not operate outside of profit. Now you might think, now wait a minute, science is under the purview of the government, and it's a civic public concern. This is not a profit institution. Oh, now wait. Who pays scientists paychecks? Oh, well, the state. Now, where does the state get its money? Oh, it gets its money from taxes and sapping and deceiving the people. What about scientists who don't work for the state? Oh, well, they work for private corporations. And so they do what their corporate bidders, right? They do the behest of the corporate elite, right? So this is a whole other realm of this, right? Science Inc., okay, that no one ever talks about. I'm not bitching at you. I'm just saying the people in the science establishment, so-called, don't ever take this into account and don't think about the fact that maybe human beings are just as greedy and egotistical and self-serving and deceptive as they are in business in science.
Hey, guys.
Hey,
Chris.
man.
What's going on? I got something to say about this. When there's no profit to be had, there's the so-called profit of prestige that the academics have in the science field, and they can easily manipulate them with that too, without ever giving them a salary higher than $75,000 a year or something that the PhDs make when they.
Yeah, well, they also make money though from other means. So I knew professors and how they make their money obviously from tenure.
I know, but yeah, they can control them with by like dangling the carrot of prestige in front of them. Also, they don't really need to control them with money. It's a psychological thing in the end, anyway. Money is a psychological manipulation, which has direct symbolic relation to products that the scientist can buy and improve his ego profile for himself.
Well,
just
think about
a human being. Human being looks like everybody else. Yeah. Go ahead.
Great. Think about
what happened? Chris disappeared?
No, I'm here.
Oh, I'm done. I'm done with my comment. You guys go ahead.
I was just going to say, Chris, think about this point we've made before. Why do people believe things? It's not always because, or most of the time because of, individual research into facts and evidence and things like that. If you talk about scientism or even the Darwinian mythology or aliens, for example, which is a very similar ideology, people believe it because of H.G. Wells. They believe it because of movies that they saw, of science fiction novels that they've been reading since they were kids. They believe it because of the fiction, which symbiotically works to interpret the, quote, science when they enter into the lab in exactly the same way as you were discussing people understanding the fake war on terror. It's the exact same. There's no blurred line between fact and fiction. It's fact that is presented in two different ways. It's fiction presented in two different means that give you the interpretation of these events. It's the exact same thing with Darwinism.
Well, in that sense, everything is fiction because everything is metaphors. I mean, your relationship to reality is through metaphors, through symbols, right? So almost everything is, even the first word you learn is two metaphors away from reality, isn't it?
Well, I wouldn't say that would therefore mean that everything is a lie.
It's not a lie, but it's closer. It's basically not, there's nothing that can be the full map of the territory. There's only approximations of the territory.
Or if you go to the mountains and you go skiing and you hit a tree at 35 miles per hour.
That's reality.
That's reality. that's not going to be any different for you than it's going to be for me. I mean, there's reality, and then there's this, what we're talking about, which is a completely different thing altogether.
And there's modified reality,
and it's storytelling. It's storytelling, and that's what we're talking about. It's not.
It's approximations, different levels of approximations. The more accurate you get in your approximation, that's what you call truth. Until, like, let's say Newton got pretty accurate in his approximation, they call what he did truth, whether or not you think is true, whether or not you think is deliberate manipulation. And then some couple of 100 years later, somebody else came along that maybe mapped it a little bit more detail, the territory, and then he was the one that had the truth. And Newton was left debunked, or whatever they call it. He's debunked to a certain point. Certain things might still be valid. Other things are discarded. Now, who determines that? Scientific method should determine that. But often, authority figures determine it and call it scientific method, which is like Kissinger said, it's not the perception, it's not what's true that counts, it's what is perceived to be true. Yeah.
Amen. Exactly.
Yeah.
And another thing I was going to say about your skiing, hitting a tree as reality, if you don't know how to, anything about flight, and you go and you try to flap your wings on top of a cliff like a bird, and try to fly, you're going to, of course, fall to the ground and die or get.
Well, it's not predicated on your worldview or belief.
I know.
Let's say you were raised watching cartoons all your whole life, and that's all you were exposed to. It was like Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner, and stuff like that. And you believe in cartoon physics. You hit that tree, you're not going to punch a human-shaped hole in the tree and come out the other side.
Oh, I know that.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work like that.
When you try to fly, of course, it's not going to work. But when you use a certain amount of science and you think about it, if you use your brain, what do? You change what is in reality and what could kill you, and you make a parachute, right? And with a parachute, if it was a high enough cliff, if you were up in the mountains, with a certain type of parachute, you can jump off the cliff and you will float down and you won't die. And what was the difference? What made the difference was your intellectual spending of your energy in a certain direction, with using certain rituals, rites, which then those rituals become codified. These are rituals for making a parachute. These are rituals for making a glider. These are rituals for making a paper airplane. And these are the rituals for finally coming up with an airplane that flies. And once you do that, once you get those rituals right, then you change reality's forms to fit you. So human beings can change their reality. They can change the forms of energy as long as these are truthful discoveries, like root discoveries to the root, truth to the root. And if they do that, then they can flap their wings off a cliff, but they do it with a parachute or they do it with some kind of flying device that helps them stay in the air.
That's a great point that is also misunderstood and fuzzy that we pointed out between origin science and operation science. So operation science would be engineering, people who build bridges or computers. They're actually hands-on doing things. Origin science is the idea of trying to give a theory or interpretive framework to how humans got here and how we came to be, right? Origin science, by its very definition, is very speculative because we aren't there. We don't know what happened 8 billion years ago, right? That's just a completely manufactured number anyway. So but what happens is that there's this confusion and the sleight of hand that's pulled where the evolutionary proponents will say, if you look at computers and technology, that proves evolution, right? But now wait a minute. You see operation science, engineering, these kinds of things are vastly different from speculations about origins. And that's why I constantly harp on the fact that it's mythology. Now, I happen to think that mythology can be true, right? Just depending on how it's defining these words, because they contain archetypal truths and messages, right, that can be handed down. And what happens is that these people think that they're stepping away from mythology and into something, quote, empirical and rational, and they're just giving you another mythology repackaged under the guise of empirical science. And it's not. That's the point. It's not empirical science by definition. It's a new mythology and interpretation of speculation about what happened billions of years ago.
It's a fuzzy map pretending to be an accurate map. There's a quote by Jean Cocteau about that. Have you ever read it? He says, "I've always preferred mythology to history. History is composed of truths that become lies. Mythology of lies that become truths. One characteristic of our age is that it creates instant myths in every field. The press is responsible for inventing people who already exist and endowing them with an imaginary life superimposed on their own. Brigitte Bardot is a perfect example of this odd concoction. It is likely that fate set her down at the precise point where dream and morality merge. Her beauty and talent are undeniable, but she possesses some other unknown quality which attracts idolaters in an age deprived of gods." I thought that was a great quote. I think it was about Brigitte Bardot when she first came on the scene in the film And God Created Woman. Have you guys seen that?
No, but I'm going to have to check out. Good talk, though, Chris, and Megan Tropic. Good talk to you guys.
All right. Thanks, Jay. Good talking to you, man.
Take it easy, man.
Yeah, have a good night.
You know what Cocteau is, Chris?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
He was a filmmaker. He was a poet. He was a writer, painter. He was a multi-medium artist, and he was also a homosexual. His films are pretty good. The Orpheus films that he has, those are pretty good. But, of course, they're very artsy and super, what do they call it, surrealistic.
Uh-huh.
At one time, he was an opium addict. He's very famous. Jean Cocteau. He was also pro-Hitler, believe it or not, because he was a friend of sculptor? Brecker? Arno Brecker, that Third Reich sculptor with all those big Aryan statues of stuff. You've seen those, right? That he was a friend of his, so when Hitler went into France, he convinced him that Hitler was a friend of the arts and that he shouldn't be anti-Hitler. It's good for France. Are you hitting that tobacco pipe?
Am I hitting a tobacco pipe? No.
I heard something, and I heard you lighting something back there.
Just now, no. Smoke a cigarette, but not at the moment. But yeah, anyway, what we were on is about how do people adopt a worldview or adopt ideas? And yeah, I think it's important to always kind of keep hammering on this one point, is that we are allegedly living in this age of science and reason, and we're not. We're just simply not. I mean, went into this before on what was the last call, or the call where you're talking about trans species. And there's a post on the blog about a guy that he took a notion to live like a goat, so he's got like a goat suit or a goat.
Yeah, I saw that.
Apparatus, so he can walk around like a goat. And
moron every day.
I don't think that he came up with that idea on his own, but it's kind of this idea that transspeciesism or whatever. I don't know. It's just breaking down because this also falls in line with Darwinism and all of that, where it's just reinforcing the idea that humans are basically animals. Yeah, and if you want to transition species, why not? It's like you're an animal anyway. You feel comfortable maybe hanging out with goats. Go for it, It's like suggestive of that, even though it's sort of something that's implied. It's not directly stated, but it sounds completely preposterous and far out, and it looks absolutely ridiculous, and it is. But I think that it's suggestive of certain ideas, and that's where we're at in this sort of postmodernist era or what have you, where it's just this systematic dissolution of any kind of demarcation between gender, species, family, interfamily, interpersonal relationships, and all that are being dissolved, broken down, fragmented. This is all part and parcel of this worldview that nobody ever questions the underlying premise of what's establishing it, which is this abstraction called authority that people defer to without ever questioning the underlying premise that props it all up.
Yeah, but somebody has to teach them to question the underlying premise. A kid isn't born with as an adult. So some people never become adults in that section of their mind that in order to perceive reality, most people never really learn how to think properly. To think properly, you have to, first of all, before anything else, control what goes into your subconscious, your unconscious mind, because that's most of your mind, man. That's 90% of your mind is the bottom of the iceberg, and the tip of the iceberg is your conscious that controls it, that sets the compass for it. And if the iceberg is poisoned, the foundation is underneath the water is poisoned, what you got on top, that little tip of the iceberg, isn't going to move anything around. But if you have the bottom part taken care of, if you control the stuff that goes into your head, into your subconscious, if you don't put garbage in, so you get garbage out, you put good stuff in, so you get good stuff out, then you can, with the conscious mind, then you can steer the entire iceberg, that huge iceberg, you can steer it with just your conscious direction. It makes a huge difference, and people don't even learn that, and that's deliberate. That's deliberate because, what do people do when they have kids? They put them in front of the TV from 3 years old on, and then before that, who knows what goes into their heads, all the stuff that their parents learned wrong, all the hang-ups that they pass on to their kids. So it's a vicious cycle that keeps going generation to generation. But I was going to ask you, but you totally don't believe in any kind of evolution? I mean, not even like much faster evolution, or then how do you account for the phenomena of heredity and stuff?
I don't know how that even I don't know how that even
the little changes that you see over the years, like you might look like your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather that lived in the 19th century if you find a picture of them. Stuff like that, looking like your ancestors. Maybe if they had some kind of illness or disease, maybe you contracting it also 4 generations later. That kind of stuff.
You can say something like, do you believe in evolution? But the thing about that statement and that goes back to defining terms. It's meaningless. Like evolution, if you say evolution, it's such open to interpretation to be essentially meaningless. So when you ask somebody, do you believe in evolution? It's like, it's essentially meaningless. Like if you're saying that, because, you can observe changes or variations in animal types out there in the wild, or, between generations or something like that. What is immediately inferred or implied is that monkeys to man, or from goo to zoo to you evolution, yep. Where it's like, man. The primal, and that's always suggestive of that. It's like if that's what you're talking about, it's not, absolutely not. I don't have absolutely no belief in that whatsoever. It's there because there's no evidence for it. There's absolutely zero evidence for it. There is no mechanism. There is no There's no mechanism that can be articulated coherently by any proponent of Darwinism. So what is the point of even giving it the time of day? It's like it's absolutely preposterous.
Yeah.
But can you take a grizzly bear and a black bear and crossbreed them? Yeah, because they're essentially at the base. They come from the same archetypical type animal that is whatever precursor to that. So those bear or that bear type, and people don't understand that. They say, "Oh, that's a different species." Well, that is a meaningless word because that doesn't even have any clear definition, even in a Darwinistic framework or terminology, because you'll get all kinds of different definitions of what the word species even is. But like Darwin said, if he observed a bear swimming and catching fish in his mouth, he said, given enough time, that the bear will turn into an aquatic mammal, like a whale. He actually proposed that,
Why enough time? Foxes turn into...
if you have not enough time doesn't even factor in, because time, that's suggestive that, time could somehow accommodate that.
How does he know what time is? Maybe time shrinks and expands. How does he know what it is? He has one concept of time.
If you have a mechanism that's clearly defined and that you can articulate and you can demonstrate, then yes, time would be a consideration. But there isn't. There isn't a mechanism. There isn't a mechanism. So you could say a trillion or a billion years. It won't even matter. It's not going to change into an aquatic animal. It's just absolutely not. There's constraints in biology, and that is an absolute fact. There is a boundary that this adaptation can work within a boundary, and that's an absolute established fact. There is no doubt about it. But anything else is suggestive of that given enough time, that a certain animal will transform so fundamentally that it will be, it could be a totally entirely different animal altogether. There's no evidence for that. Zero.
Through evidence is what they're talking about. They're saying through accidents, but through human intervention, of course, you can turn foxes into kind of tame, almost as tame. And have you seen that video? You've seen that video, right? I think you linked
the silver fox.
The foxes that turn into, they domesticate them. They turn them they take the most,
that's a great example.
Wild. Yeah,
that's a great example of how evolution, as it's taught, is completely 100% false, because this. But
it's human intervention that changes it, though. Human intervention comes in.
It's not necessarily human intervention. It's not. It's the dynamics of the animal at its essence that accommodates that. It's already inherent. It's already a potential that already exists in the animal.
But without the human element, it's not going to work. The human has to come and take the least wild foxes and breed them together to make a new kind of fox that even changes its coat color within a couple of generations. So that already right there, it completely debunks Darwin. Darwin's that huge amounts of time needed to change animals into different.
That's what I'm talking about with the mechanism. Like, what is going on at the molecular level that allows for that? Well, obviously, it's something that can happen rapidly. They said within 10 years, they were able to observe a drastic behavioral, the fur patterns, the ears, everything started looking more like domesticated dog within a really short period of time.
Color changed from orange to gray, I think, with spots, and only a couple of generations.
They started exhibiting a lot of traits of domesticated dogs within a really rapid time frame. But it's okay. So what Darwin is suggesting is that mutations, which are random occurrences, accidents that happen to the molecular structure of the DNA, accumulate over vast aeons of time, and then that will give you these different novel traits. But that is obviously not what's happening. You're observing a potential that is already exists within the creature. It's obvious. It's like there's no debating that. But see, what happens is that these adaptive changes get conflated with Darwinistic ideals, and the mechanism is never even discussed. Everything is implied or inferred. That's what I'm talking about. Go into what's happening at the molecular level and explain it and quantify it, and then parse it out and put it out in a scientific paper. Do they do that? No, because it's not dependent upon observation. It's not dependent on facts or evidence. It's dependent on inference based on some fantasy story, and whatever can be taken to interpret to fit into that. It's done through suggestion and inference. It's not done through any direct observational, quantifiable set of facts or systematic parsing of those facts and laying them out. It's not based on any of that. That's what I'm trying to say.